Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishthiki कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः तदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंश कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते वेदांत स्वामी नामने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषण्यवादी पाश्चात्य कम करुति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्री गुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवम श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम। Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining today uh, in our small and humble effort to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead by discussing his glories in the form of Srimad Bhagavad. There is no greater activity of spiritual piety than discussing Harikatha in the association of devotees. And this very simple activity, when done with faith, devotion, humility, simple activity of relishing the glorification of the Lord and his devotees, the association of devotees, is actually such a powerful activity by itself, standalone, that it has power to take one from the lowest level to the highest level. In fact, great Acharya say, when we go back to the spiritual world, all other forms of yoga are kept behind. But the yoga of hearing and chanting is never relinquished. It is an eternal activity. It is the very nature of the self. All living entities who emanate as part and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their ultimate dharma is to eternally sing the glories of the divine couple and participate in their glorious pastimes by performing, by taking and accepting the role of humble service so as to partake of that nectar of the Lord's eternal pleasure with His divine energy. Everything is the Lord's play. The spiritual world is wonderful play where everyone enjoys. The material world is also a kind of play where living entities who refuse to cooperate with the Lord are given a chance to rectify themselves. So it's a play of sorts. For the Lord, it is still play because the Lord comes to this world to save the living entities. So that's another pastime of the Lord, Leela. So there's a Srishti Leela, there is an eternal Leela. The Lord is ever happy. The Prabhupada says in one place in his purports that Lord is all blissful. There's only one pain that the Lord has, is that, some living entities are suffering. The Lord doesn't have his own pain, but his compassion for the living entities is a small prick for him. And that is what drives the Lord. Sambhavami yuge yuge comes again and again. And the Lord also derives pleasure in that activity of saving the living entities, delivering the living entities. Tesham aham samuddarta mrityu samsara vartmani bhavami na achirat partha maya veshita chetasam. So that's another Leela, the Taran Leela, which doesn't happen in the spiritual world. Who is there to save in the spiritual world? But the Lord, he comes to this world to preach, to teach Dharma, to help living entities turn towards him and to deliver them, especially those who make an effort to turn towards him and take his shelter. And that's another kind of pleasure. So when we hear about these various leelas of the Lord, when we start understanding that we need to find our natural state within this divine arrangement, that is the beginning of auspiciousness for us. And the more we are aligned, the more auspicious for us. And that alignment, in very simple words, is what is known as Sanatan Dharma, the eternal nature of the self. That's all we need to do. We have to understand our eternal nature and live that eternal nature. Now we think, Prabhupada and the Shastras often say, now we think that spiritual life is unnatural, material life is natural, but actually we have become so used to being sick that good health seems like unhealthy for us. We are conditioned to suffering. Correct? Like, a patient who stayed so long in the hospital, he thinks this hospital is only my home. Oh no, you have to get well and go out. You don't have to eat just saltless porridge all the time for all time to come. So ultimately, spiritual life is a life of pleasure. It's not a life of austerity. The austerity portion of it comes in the early stages because one is so addicted to the causes of suffering that it is painful to withdraw from the causes of suffering. Anyway, so we are now today continuing our discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. We are at the concluding chapter, chapter 15 of the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavad. This chapter is entitled Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. We are at the conclusion of the section, the last part, the last 5-6 chapters of the 7th canto, which are discussing an overview of the Varnashram Dharma. Very beautiful conversation between Srila Narad Muni and Yudhishthir Maharaj, which is of course being narrated by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj in response to certain questions. So we are at the conclusion of that subpart and the conclusion of the 7th canto. Basically, what this chapter deals with, so it's a long chapter, 80 odd verses. So we may not be able to complete the chapter. I think it will not be fair to rush through it because there are a lot of important points covered in this chapter. And the special aspect of this chapter, or the focus of this chapter, is so far the high level view of the Varnashram has been given. Each of the ashramas has been described, each of the Varnas have been described. Last class we discussed about Grahastha Dharma, ideal family life especially. So that part was discussed. Now in this particular chapter, which is the conclusion, Narad Muni explains more elaborately. Previously, it was established that amongst the Varnashrams, the Brahmanas are the most exalted and the most rightly situated amongst the system to make true spiritual advancement towards the goal of life. But amongst the Brahmanas themselves, there are various grades of Brahmanas. So this chapter discusses a bit on the different grades of Brahmans. Very interesting. And then highlight certain principles which are very important. In very simple words, now you may think of Brahmana, people when they say Brahmana, oh, this is in terms of, some, uh, you know, birth consideration or some. But as far as Srila Prabhupada's teachings are concerned and practical application in Kali Yuga is concerned, Brahma Janati iti Brahmana. He who knows the science of the self is a Brahman. And he who knows the science of the self is a person who's a sadhaka also. He's making an endeavor towards liberation. He's making an endeavor towards attaining shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Right? So, to varying degrees, all of you who are here on a Saturday evening, not doing anything else, fall into that category of spiritualist. And Prabhupada kept that liberal definition of a Brahmana. We may not be Purohits, we may or may not be wearing the sacred thread, but the principles which are applied to Brahmanas are the principles which are meant for serious spiritualists. Because a Brahmana is expected to be a serious spiritualist. What does serious spiritualist means? That their goal of life is very clear and they are making a serious endeavor. They may not yet be fully liberated. They may still have some material attachments, but they know where they have to go. They are making a sincere attempt. Some very seriously, some little bit, some very little bit, but at least they are progressive. So that spectrum of Brahmanas is explained from the lowest band, which is ritualistic Brahmanas. Ritualistic Brahmanas are those who are attached to rituals. Do nicely. They are pious, they are religious, they are nice, faithful. But like the Bhagavad Gita says, right? They are dedicated that their whole idea is, I want to be so religious and so nice and do the yajna so wonderfully. I want to go to heaven and enjoy. In the Vedic system, such kinds of Brahmanas, or for that matter, any category, are not considered very intelligent. In some other religious systems, the goal of life is to enjoy sensual pleasures in heaven. In some religious systems. In Sanatana Dharma, that is considered a low class aspiration. Abrahma bhavanal loka punaravartino arjuna mam upetya kaunteya punarjanma. You go even into heavens, you will have to suffer. Wherever you are trying to enjoy the senses independent of the Lord, suffering will come. So those who are less intelligent, they worship the devatas and they perform various kinds of yajnas. And they think that the be all and end all of life is to gather enough money. Money means spiritual punya credits, not spiritual credits, punya credits. To have a vacation time in a higher planetary system. Like some people in this world are just working so hard that they will save enough money so that they can go on a beautiful vacation to Switzerland, Europe, or whatever is in their bucket list of things to do before they die. Different people have different bucket lists. So this chapter gives an overview of the spectrum and actually tell what a serious practitioner of spiritual life is supposed to focus on, how he thinks, what he should be cautious of. So that is what we'll discuss. It's a long chapter, like I said. Let's see if we can cover at least roughly half of this chapter. Let's see. So we may have to do it in two parts. Various kinds of irreligion are also discussed within a small subsection. We'll discuss that also. So Narad Muni starts this particular chapter. Hare Krishna. Starts this particular chapter by saying what are the different kinds of brahmanas. And he says that there are some brahmanas who are very attached to fruitive activities, like what we just mentioned. Higher than those are those who are attached to austerities and penances. They're not attracted to gross enjoyment, but they are attached to, so it's better. They want to increase their tapobal by lot of austerities. There are others who are attached to Vedic study. They want to study the scriptures. They are very intellectually oriented. They want to develop their knowledge, give talks, be learned teachers, acharyas. Acharya not in the spiritual sense, but acharyas in terms of teachers. And there are a few, Narad Muni says, are very serious to cultivate spiritual knowledge. Some people learn and study just because they want to show, I know so much. It's an intellectual stimulation. But some are correct. Like some people, they like to read and study a lot so they can go and show off what they know. But there are some who are actually studying scrutinizingly to really develop their spiritual understanding, their spiritual consciousness. And they are not just intellectually studying and becoming armchair philosophers, but they are actually practicing different kinds of yogas to increase their spiritual knowledge. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. So broadly, these are the four kinds of brahmanas, of course, in their increasing order. Again, attached to ritualistic activities, attached to austerities and penances, attached to studying the Vedas, and actually involved in cultivating knowledge and practicing a yoga to actually attain the Supreme. So obviously, the last category are those who are very, very focused on spiritual liberation, and that is the goal of the Srimad Bhagavad. The goal of the Bhagavad is to take people up, not just be ritualistically religious and attached to matter, not just be doing austerities and penances just to gather power, not just to develop learning for the sake of learning and becoming a big knowledgeable pandit and display one's knowledge. But ultimately, if one is not developing true spiritual insight and coming closer to oneself and the Lord, then one is actually missing the goal of life. And that is why those who are serious about spiritual advancement, Narad Muni says, if somebody wants liberation for himself, and this is addressing to all the populace, the people in general, not the Brahmanas particularly, anyone who wants good fortune for themselves, they want liberation for themselves or their forefathers, should give charity to those high class Brahmanas, especially those who are devoted to spiritual cultivation. If no such Brahmana is available in your locality, then you may go to a ritualistic Brahmana and serve him. But the benefit that you will get by serving an advanced spiritualist is of a totally different quality. And you will not get the same benefit by serving or giving charity to a Brahmana who is addicted to karma kand. And then Narad Muni guides that oftentimes Brahmanas are invited to the homes to give blessings. So first thing is choose a highly qualified spiritual Brahmana. And a recommendation is given, a guiding principle. If you are calling for some ritualistic ceremony in your home, to worship some devata for some cause, then try to invite only two Brahmins. If you're doing some Shraddha ceremony for your ancestors, invite three Brahmanas, not more than that. If you really don't have money, just you can invite one. It's okay. But don't, do a big show of religious things, call and then, you do a post on Facebook and Instagram and show everybody I'm so religious, this and that. And also the idea is when you call Brahmanas, you should be able to serve them nicely. First of all, you should not make show of opulence. You're not there calling them around to show, hey, you see how much wealth I have, see how nicely I can feed you, I can give you all charity, I am so great, I am such an enjoyer. Sometimes that mentality comes when people perform religious ceremonies. That is not very good. Call a couple of really qualified and serve them nicely. See, one of the things which happens when one invites more guests than one can properly serve, especially exalted people, then one risks the offense of neglecting or not serving them properly. Especially His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, oftentimes in his various talks would hint to us that one must be very careful when one is serving guests, especially exalted personalities. One has to give them proper respect, honor, serve with great attention and love. If you call too many, you cannot, isn't it? Right? I mean, if you call 21 sannyasis to your home, how are you going to be able to, personally take care of each and every guest's needs and show them proper respect and honor? It's very, very difficult. So, don't do show. Don't have to call too many either during Shraddha or a Yajna. Otherwise, there will be some kind of discrepancy in your execution. Either discrepancies in time, place, in the offering of respects, in ingredients, in the way how you offer worship. So the basic principle or the guiding principle Narad Muni is saying is very important. You get qualified people, saintly brahmanas. You worship the Supreme Lord. You select a nice auspicious place and auspicious time. Worship the Supreme Lord with first class offerings made with ghee and cooked with love. Offer them to the deities and then offer that Krishna Prasad to a suitable, exalted person, a Vaishnava or Brahman. This is the perfect formula for everlasting prosperity. You don't even have to do big, big yajnas. And this principle is so important to understand. In fact, in the earlier chapter, I believe in the previous chapter itself, it was very clearly mentioned that the Supreme Lord enjoys eating through the mouth of the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas rather than eating through the sacred fire. So sometimes, in Kali Yuga, we may think, oh, I need to perform big, big yajnas, this, that, I cannot do this. Not needed. You see what the Bhagavatam says. Very simple. Chant the holy name, that is one yajna, Sankirtana yajna, and offer nice foodstuffs to the Lord and serve the Vaishnavas. Please the Vaishnavas by feeding them nicely. That is a greater yajna than doing big, big fire yajnas. In fact, if one worships the Supreme Lord nicely but neglects properly respecting the Vaishnavas, the Lord is not pleased. There are many pastimes around this. I don't want to go into that, otherwise, we will not be able to discuss our main topic. To the extent it is said, if one is worshipping the deity in the middle of the arti and a great personality comes to the door, an elevated person, the suggestion, just to give you some idea, the advice of how to deal with such a situation is to temporarily pause the arti, go out, receive the great personality, offer him a suitable place to sit, and then with his permission, excuse yourself, come back, complete the arti, then you can go and serve. That is how one should deal. Tirtham kurvanti tirthani svantasthena gadaprata. Because they are verily carrying, the great souls are verily carrying the Supreme Lord in their heart. They can make the places of pilgrimage pure by their presence. And then Narad Muni warns, says, see, nice prasad, but please remember, there are some people who during auspicious religious ceremonies start offering amisha. Amisha means non-veg things. Meat, fish, eggs. Don't do that. Even if one is a Kshatriya, one should neither offer nor eat such things. The best thing is make nice foodstuffs cooked with ghee, and that will please the Lord, that will please the Brahmanas. The Lord and the Brahmanas are never pleased by violence on innocent living entities. Even all this so-called bali and sacrifice of animals, no. Any person who wants to advance in true religion must understand that true religious principles always, the guiding point is not hurting other living entities. Hurting other living entities is caused by envy within one's heart. Giving up of envy to other living entities, which ultimately means giving up envy towards the Lord, is the fundamental principle of spiritual advancement. So, whether in relation to body, mind, or word, ultimately religious principles is about abandoning envy and exploiting and enjoying the killing and eating of another living entity is very counterproductive to this principle. And there is no greater religion superior to this. Narad is telling. Superior to what? Superior to the giving up of envy. That is why even in our devotional literatures, what is pure devotional service? Pure devotional service is nothing but giving up of envy. How is it giving up of envy? Now we want to be enjoyers in this material world because we are envious of the Lord. By becoming exclusively devoted to the Lord's pleasure and Lord's service, we will give up envy. That is the way. A Kanishta is only engaged in the Lord's service, but he is envious of other living entities. And Uttam Bhagwat is not only serving the Lord, but he sees the Lord present in everyone's heart. And he knows how to serve everyone according to their levels. He's totally non-reliant. Nirmatsaranam satam. It's a very simple principle of how to understand somebody's advanced. Not just because he's a big preacher, give wonderful classes, very good manager. I mean, these are all wonderful attributes which are special blessings that the Lord may give to various individuals as abilities. Ability should not be confused with advancement. Correct? Abilities. Demons have had abilities better than many devatas. Abilities is wonderful if they are used in the Lord's service. Otherwise, they can actually be serious impediments. So and that is in the Shastras, Nirmatsaranam Satam. Krishna also says to Arjuna, tell this wisdom to him who is non-envious. This being of non-envious is such an essential principle. Because the divisive mentality of thinking of I, me, mine, and others is actually that ignorance is the cause of our bondage. When we see that the Supreme Lord is everything and everything is resting within the Lord, everything is Bhuktaram Yagyadapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Surudas Sarva Tanam Yatva Mam Shanti Brahmacharya. That the Lord is the owner, controller, enjoyer. Everything. That is non-enviousness. There is no higher principle there. So those who are truly advancing and awakening in spiritual knowledge, they understand the true purpose of sacrifice is gradually to come to that platform of true knowledge, which involves developing the quality of non-enviousness. And that development of non-enviousness is automatically includes detachment from matter, because if you're attached to matter, you will be envious. Because if you're attached to matter, you'll be thinking in terms of your enjoyment. If you're thinking of your enjoyment, you're envious of the enjoyment of others. You are envious of the supreme enjoyer position of the Supreme Lord. All these things are interconnected. If you want to make Good progress, be detached from matter, control your senses, and in that way practice spiritual principles. Otherwise, you will just become superfluously religious, spiritual, but deep down you will still be attached to your false ego. And at one point, you have to come to giving up these ritualistic ceremonies and go higher. You have to understand ultimately ritualistic principles serve a purpose only up to one point. Beyond that, you have to cultivate genuine spiritual understanding. Don't be trapped in all these materialistic things and animal sacrifice. Don't be envious of these poor animals. Huh? Whatever food is easily available, patram pushpam phalam toyam. Huh? Krishna also wants patram pushpam phalam toyam, not egam, chickenam, muttonam. Huh? No. Krishna doesn't say anything like that. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. All kinds of things we eat are, no, in some ways, patram pushpam phalam, either in seed form or in full form. So that's how spiritual, those who want to be spiritually progressive, they should be. So no need, first of all, no need to be too pompous in your rituals. Do it in a nice dharmic way. Do it by worshipping the Lord nicely with nice vegetarian foodstuffs made with love, made with nice sattvic ingredients. Call a couple of genuinely qualified Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, serve them with great attention and devotion. That is first class. Don't get involved in animal slaughter. Don't get involved in, amisha. You simply do this, you'll make very good spiritual advancement. Spiritual advancement doesn't come by people saying, "Oh, what a big ceremony he did." Oh, it's not based on Facebook likes and number of views, and that is all just a show of pompousness for garlanding one's false ego. Of course, if one has the means and ability to really do a wonderful ceremony with a genuine ability to, give attention and properly honor and respect everyone, then that's not a restriction. The key idea behind it is if one overdoes it beyond one's capacity, there'll be so many faults. So that is to be avoided. Then a very interesting topic comes, which is the 5 branches of irreligion. Narad Muni warns. It's also a very interesting point. And he says there are 5 kinds of irreligion. What are the 5 kinds of irreligion which should be avoided? Bidharma, Paradharma, Abhasa, Upadharma, and Chaladharma. These are actually 5 kinds of deviation from religion. First is Bidharma or irreligion. So to do those things which are actually opposed to your actual religious principles is Vidharma. They are actually directly opposed or they obstruct your execution of your religious principle. That is Vidharma. What is Paradharma? To follow another's religious duty is Paradharma. If you are not qualified that for that person's duty and you are trying to act like that person, just because that kind of a performance of that duty will give you more honor, more respect. For example, somebody is not qualified to be a Brahmana, but just because he has learned some rituals, tries to act like a Brahmana and get worship like a Brahmana. Or someone who takes up sannyas, not because he wants to fully depend on the Lord, so that he's taken care of, everyone will respect him, honor him, worship him, and he accepts a position for which he is not qualified. That is also Paradharma. Then there is Abhasa, pretentious religion. Don't be pretentious. You have to be very honest and sincere. If you do pretense in your performance of dharma, trying to show yourself to be something you are not, or do something, and act and show, but actually internally you are totally disaligned. That is abhasa. What is upadharma? Upadharma means falsely, out of one's pride, creating a religious system which is not authorized. Creating a new kind of a religious system and trying to act as if, oh, this is something very wonderful and advanced. Nowadays, Prabhupada says many so-called gurus and swamis and avatars come up with all kinds of systems. Saying, nobody knows, only I know. I have created something best. As if all the yogis, munis and avatars are fools. They didn't know anything. Some people come and say, oh, I don't believe I read in this Gita, Upanishads. I believe on what I just uh, believe, based on my own understanding and results. Why should I look at? They come up, but they want others to believe them. You don't want to believe and accept the knowledge which has come through millennia and which is accepted by all the saints and which is given by the incarnations of the Lord or the Lord Himself. Huh? But they want others to accept what they are giving based on their own experience. Upadharma. And one is Chala Dharma. Chala Dharma means cheating religion. Cheating religion means you take religion but you draw all kinds of wrong meanings from it and give all kinds of interpretations to it. And then by one's word jugglery, like Prabhupada often says, right? Many people want to give their own understanding of religion. But if they say, I am giving my understanding, nobody will attend their class. So what they'll say, oh, I am giving lecture on Bhagavad Gita because people will come to listen. And then they will twist the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita and push in their own interpretation. Chala Dharma. Because they are not teaching Gita, they are teaching their concocted understanding and trying to push it in the name of this is what Krishna was telling you. So Prabhupada was so upset. He said, I will teach you Bhagavad Gita as it is. So this kind of pretentious religious system, it comes up, it is all manufactured. And such people just manufacture something. They willfully give up their own prescribed duties. So that's also known as abhasa. When one willfully neglects one's own prescribed duties and takes up a religious system or behavior, which seems religious but actually is not based on true Shastric dharma. Narmani is saying, don't be fooled into any of these five kinds of deviation from dharma. The simple thing is understand what is your duty according to Varna and Ashram and follow it sincerely. If you follow your Varna and established Varna and Ashram practices which are coming in Parampara as explained in the scriptures, as guided Sadhu, Guru Sadhu Shastra since time immemorial, they are sufficient to mitigate all material distress. Don't think that you have to come up with something new now. Nobody knows. Let me, I found a new formula. People are so excited nowadays. They want some new formula. And there are, these cheaters and cheated. There are people who will come up and say, oh, I figured it out. Come, give me some money, worship me, accept me as your guru. I will deliver you. I have come. I am incarnation of so and so. So having given this warning, avoid pompous religion, avoid deviation from religion, and then a very important principle. The Bhagavatam starts discussing, Narad Muni is explaining. Very important for a serious spiritualist, not only to not be pompous, not only to not deviate, huh, but if one wants to make serious spiritual advancement, especially for Brahmanas, huh, this is especially for Brahmanas, meaning for those who are serious about spiritual advancement. Again, I'm reminding what I mentioned at the beginning of class. So don't think this doesn't apply to you. This applies to all of us because we are here not for entertainment. We are here to nourish our soul so that we can grow in our consciousness and blossom our consciousness with devotion for the Lord. The Bhagavatam says one must learn to not over endeavor in material life. Don't get distracted to accumulate too much, to go on developing one's economic condition. Yes, dharma, artha, kama is there, but that is not the goal of life. Dharma, artha, kama is just to manage one's material situation, especially for serious spiritualists, the Brahmanas. He should not endeavor to improve his economic condition or even try to become a famous religionist. Nowadays, another trend has come. Devotees want to become famous religionists. You understand what I mean? They want to become famous preachers. Of course, I'm not saying that every famous preacher is necessarily, affected by this disease. I'm saying that there is a very high chance that one may get affected by this disease. Not a judgment of anybody, but material nature is so powerful. The fame of being a great spiritualist, the fame of being great guru, oh, he's so popular, he's so famous, he's so nice, he's so. One gets enamored by the attractive aura of a persona, and then the person starts really thinking that I'm actually such a great person. Then one gets distracted. So one should not endeavor. When a person does his service, he should not be driven either by a desire to collect too much, gather too much, or to become big famous personality. Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, in one of the purports, in one of the early chapters, I don't remember, probably it's chapter 2, it says, anyone, I don't remember the exact words, but it says, anyone who's trying to be important in either a material or a spiritual sense cannot taste the really sweet taste of devotional service. Because ultimately, trying to be important either in a material or a spiritual sense is actually an expression of envy. Again, goes back to the same thing we discussed a few minutes ago. All these things are interconnected. So, while so many instructions, again, they're all ultimately circulating around the same principle. The principle of detachment from matter, attachment to Krishna, which is all about being non-envious. It's all about finding and understanding and finding one's place in the bigger scheme of things and fitting in and playing one's role. So be satisfied. Just like a python is lying in one place and accepting things, especially an advanced spiritualist should try to live in a simple way. Don't over endeavor. So for us, we are not expected to be pythons. In Kali Yuga, it is very hard if you just sit under a tree. But the point for us is be content in what you will get with reasonable endeavor. Don't over endeavor. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangdascha laulyascha shadbir bhakti vinashyati. Bhakti is destroyed how? When you over endeavor. You become so distracted. A very important principle of spiritual advancement is being content and satisfied. Then, when the mind is content and satisfied by what comes of its own accord with reasonable endeavor to keep the body and soul together, whatever job and duties one has, do it. But no need to struggle too hard. Then the mind is peaceful enough to be absorbed in the Lord, because a mind which is greedy for material attainment cannot be focused on the Lord, cannot be absorbed in the Lord. That Supreme Lord who's residing in everyone's heart, one cannot be absorbed in remembering and meditating on Him, and one loses the ability to enjoy transcendental happiness. Lust and greed are the enemies of the spiritualist. Krishna has explained this in the Bhagavad Gita, third chapter. Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samadbhava mahashano mahapapma. Kama means intense material desire. Has two possible outcomes. Has two possible outcomes. When it is not fulfilled, it becomes krodha, frustrated anger. That's not so bad. That's bad, but not so bad. You know what is worse than material desire becoming frustrated? What is worse than material desire being frustrated? It is that when the material desire is fulfilled, Prabhu, what is this? How can it be worse? Because frustration is one-time activity. There'll be some anger, there'll be some days, oh, I didn't get this. Oh. Then after that, one forgets and cares. But if one gets, especially for something one is very, very attached to, the wrong thinking of the material consciousness is once I get it, I'll be happy and satisfied. No. For lust, when lust is fed with the objects of the senses, the flame of lust only increases. What one says after enjoying, he doesn't say enough, I'm satisfied. He says, I want more. The kama turns into lobha, greed. So when one gets, one becomes even more greedy. I want more. I want more. I want more. Correct? I mean, whether you agree or not, that's what the Bhagavatam says. So this is the deeper, subtle points of how material nature works. And a serious spiritualist understands this wisdom and carefully guards himself. Both ways is a problem for lust. One direction is anger, one direction is greed. So, what is wisdom? Don't be lusty. Do your dharma, do whatever is needed to earn enough to maintain a decent livelihood. Your mind is peaceful, not distracted, not disturbed. Do that. Remember the Lord. If your mind is peaceful, you can remember the Lord even as you're doing your duties. Your mind is disturbed by lust, greed, anger, envy. How are you going to remember the Lord? Either throughout your activities or even when you are going back home. Continuously working overtime. How I can enjoy, how I can manipulate, how I can do this. He's my friend, he's my enemy, he did like this, he did like that. Gossip, envy, criticism, comparison. One will continuously be robbed of the pleasure, of the nectar of meditating on the Supreme Lord if one's consciousness is hijacked by these six enemies: Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara. Don't be a materialistic man, Narad Muni said. Materialistic man is now wandering in all directions, impelled by lust and greed. Is there a need to accumulate so much wealth? At the end of the day, it will actually make you miserable. You think it is going to make you happy, it will make you miserable, and at the end of your life, nothing is achieved. You have to anyway leave everything. True happiness is to be self-satisfied. A very nice example Narad Muni gives. He says, just like a person who wears suitable shoes Even though he walks on pebbles and stones, his feet are not hurt. Similarly, even on thorns, because his legs are protected. Similarly, if the heart is covered by a layer of satisfaction, very beautiful, huh? Just like the feet are covered by a sole of the shoe, protected. If the heart is protected by the soul of satisfaction, the thorns and the pebbles of materialist that are created because of this whole material association doesn't affect. One can actually feel happiness everywhere. One is not affected by what is happening around him. A self-satisfied person, my dear king, Narad Muni is telling Yudhishthir Maharaj, is happy even just drinking water. He's not expecting anything great. One who is driven by his tongue and genitals. These are the two most difficult things to control. The tongue, which wants to taste, and the genitals, which want to enjoy. Such a householder dog who is continuously dedicated to enjoying the senses is always suffering. The same exact sentiment is reflected in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jiver lalase iti utidhai shishnodara parayana Krishna nahi pai. He who's running around here and there in this material world to give pleasure to these two senses, Jivhera lalase, iti utidhai, running here and there. Shishna udara parayan, is dedicated to his belly and genitals. Krishna nahi. So be satisfied. Don't run around for this. Spend your contemplation energy on contemplating on the name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Lord, on the service of the Lord. Do whatever is necessary, but remain satisfied. If a spiritualist becomes greedy and becomes distracted by material attainment, then he loses his spiritual strength, his education, his austerity, and his reputation as a devotee. Everything becomes lost. Eventually, all his so called knowledge will also disappear. Because knowledge is not just about being able to tell, knowledge has to be internalized and displayed in one's character. So one must be careful. One must be careful to control his mind and not become angry. Anger and greed must be controlled. Because a greedy person, no matter how much he achieves, even if a greedy person, Bhagavatam says, conquers all directions or has enjoyed everything in this world, he's still not satisfied. Hiranyakashipu, excellent example. What had he not controlled? He came to such a point that nothing else was left other than fighting Vishnu and killing Vishnu. Ravan, so attached to lust, enjoying beautiful woman. I don't want to go into details, but he had the most beautiful women, either whom he had married properly or improperly. Improperly means by abducting them. Some he had even raped. He was a very famous rapist of his times. I don't want to go into that story, but he was cursed also because of raping some apsaras. Even after having amongst the most, his wife Mandodari was extraordinarily beautiful. Still not satisfied. That's the nature of lust. And in the end, he couldn't control his mind when he saw Sita, and that destroyed him. So that is the nature of lust. Those who are not satisfied with their own position, oh Yudhishthir Maharaj, many people, even many learned people, and people who are eligible to attain and sit on great exalted positions, they also have fallen into hellish life because of not being satisfied. So this is a big enemy for the spiritualist. So, with great determination, one must give up lusty desires for sense enjoyment, give up one's envy, give up one's anger by discussing the disadvantages of accumulating too much. That's how the intelligence becomes fortified. No, no, if I get into too much of this will happen, it will distract my sadhana, I cannot focus, this will happen. One should give up greed. And by discussing truth, one must give up fear. By discussing spiritual knowledge, one must give up lamentation. By serving a great devotee, one gives up his pride. If we feel we are very proud, what we should do? We should try to be humble servant of the devotees. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. Very nice wisdom is being given in these verses. By good behavior and freedom from envy, one counteracts the sufferings due to other living entities. So there are people who are giving us so much trouble. But if our behavior towards everyone is nice and we are not envious towards others, then generally we will also be a liked person, isn't it? Very simple, right? This is not something so simple. If we are nice, everybody is nice. If you are not judging and calling names and being envious behind the backs, they will also be nice to us. So if others are nice to us, it reduces our suffering of trouble due to other living entities. If one is absorbed in meditation of trance, one counteracts the sufferings which are coming due to our karma. Because by being absorbed in meditation on the Lord, it burns one's karma. If one wants to counteract the sufferings due to the body and the mind, one should take care of the body and the mind through the practice of yoga. Do yoga asanas, do pranayam. In that way, the body and mind remain very healthy. That's how you counteract. Simple and practical. If we say, oh, I will only chant Hare Krishna, but I'll not bother about my food, my exercise, and I'll not take care of the body, it doesn't work. I mean, if you're already at the level of transcended the body, that's a different issue. But we have to take care of all these things, especially in the sadhana stage, all the more. And by developing the mode of goodness, one counteracts, especially in regards to eating. This is what Bhagavatam mentions. One conquers sleep. Which means if one wants to win over sleep, one must cultivate goodness, especially eat sattvic food and eat food in moderation. Then one can conquer sleep. Gradually one should evolve from the lower modes of Raja and Tama and come to the point of goodness, and eventually one has to transcend by becoming detached to goodness. One must become elevated to Shuddha Sattva, transcendental, pure goodness. And all these things are very easily possible. This whole path of advancement is very easily possible if one serves one spiritual master with faith and devotion. That's the easy way to conquer over the modes of material nature. The Guru is directly the representation of the Supreme. Earlier it was mentioned, right? One should serve saintly people. But one should especially take shelter and especially serve one spiritual master. That way one can transcend. One should never think of the Guru as an ordinary being. Otherwise one becomes frustrated. If one doesn't respect the Lord and the spiritual master who is the representative of the Lord, one's performance of all kinds of religious activities, penances, Vedic study are just like the bathing of an elephant. It will not go anywhere. Yasya deve para bhakti yatha deve tata guru tasyate kathite hi artha prakashante hi mahatmanah. He who has implicit faith in the Guru and Krishna, to him all the deepest wisdom of the scriptures is revealed from within. People are so foolish, Narad Muni is saying. What to speak of Guru? Guru should also not be considered as a common man, but there are such foolish people, they consider even Krishna to be a common man. That is the kind of ignorance. What to do? So various things are given in religion. Narad Muni says there are various ceremonies, regulatory principles are there, various kinds of austerity. Ultimately, all these practices are given to gradually detach one from matter and make one attached to Krishna. If one is not coming to the point of being attached to Krishna and one is simply practicing various religious principles and austerities, and rather than being attached to the Lord, is just simply increasing one's either material accumulation or power or ego or worship or whatever, then one is missing the point. One should be very careful. Otherwise, all one's endeavor will simply be a labor in frustration. One should not professionally perform spiritual activities. Otherwise, one will simply remain entangled. And Vedic ritualistic ceremonies simply done for materialistic purposes by a person who's not devoted to serving the Supreme Lord, a person who's not a devotee, will remain entangled. That's why one should be careful to not get too much involved in all these things. Yes, when one is in Grasta ashram, some amount of religious ceremonies one should do according to one's situation and family traditions and all that. But at one point, one must realize that to conquer the mind and to make spiritual advancement, one must leave the company of his family, stay in a solitary place, and cultivate spiritual life. Keep body and soul together, do whatever little is necessary to make sure the basic needs of the body are met. Best to perform spiritual practices and yoga in a very nice, secluded, holy place. One can take various forms of yogas. If one wants to do Ashtanga yoga, he can do that. One should sit comfortably, keep the body straight, and do pranayam and gradually fix the mind on the Lord. Detach from the senses. Ultimately, the objective is to minimize material needs and to focus the mind on the Lord. If one follows these principles properly, very soon the heart of the yogi of such a person, his heart will become fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord, free from disturbance. A mind which is always disturbed cannot focus on the Lord, but one must make one's mind like a flame in a windless place. Correct? The same example is given in Bhagavad Gita. Flame in a windless place, free from disturbance, like a fire without smoke or flames. Very steady. Jyoti. That is needed. If one is lusty, greedy, angry, where is the steadiness in consciousness? If one is over-enduring for material energy, material things, where is the steadiness in consciousness? So, detach at the right time, be devoted to spiritual cultivation, accept whatever is coming with simple, basic endeavors, focus your mind on spiritual life. Because when one becomes detached from lusty desires, only then the mind can become calm and peaceful. And then only it is possible to achieve the real bliss of eternal connection with the Lord. Once one tastes that eternal joy, then there is no coming back. Otherwise, one is always in a dangerous situation. That's why a sannyasi, especially a sannyasi, should give up dharma, artha, kama. Should only be dedicated to the cultivation of spiritual perfection. If a sannyasi takes sannyas, but later, because of not actually being advanced, because he has accepted paradharma, he accepted a dharma which he is not fit for, he falls down again and engages again in dharma, artha, kama. He's considered a hopeless case. He's considered a vantasi, a person who has eaten his own vomit. That's why sannyasi should be very careful. Otherwise, a person who feels that the body is uh, subject of death and will eventually be consumed by the material elements, turned into stool or worms or ashes, but eventually again gives importance to the body. Such individuals are considered to be the greatest rascals. So whether one is a brahmachari, a grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi, dharma. Brahmachari means you serve the guru nicely. If you don't serve, you are a rascal. If you are a grahastha, you must follow the regulative principles of grahasthashram properly, otherwise you are a rascal. If you say you are a Vanaprastha, but you are living at home, watching TV and doing everything, then also you are rascal. If you are sannyasi, then don't be a pretender. Sannyasi means fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord, detached from samyak nyasa. Be given up. Kamyanam karmanam nyasa. Don't become a vomit eater. Better you remain in your own position honestly and cultivate spiritual advancement. Don't try to act something you are not. Just act in a way so as to please the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, you will be bewildered by the material energy. This human body, O Yudhishthir Maharaj, is meant for understanding the self, the Lord, and one's relationship with the Lord. Both the self and the Lord are transcendentally situated. And the real nature of the self and the Lord can only be understood when one has actually purified one's consciousness through advancement in spiritual knowledge. And this kind of knowledge and realization is not possible for one who has not yet given up. That foolish person who has not yet given up lust and greed for bodily enjoyment. So please don't be trapped in this. So that completes the first 40 verses. Sorry, I took 5 more minutes. So we are halfway through the chapter. So this is leading. Prabhupada was very clear. Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna have to be simultaneously taken. One cannot be attached to Krishna if one is not detached from matter. It's very simple. That's why detachment is also important. But detachment without the goal of attachment is also not going to yield the right fruits. Which means just being detached from matter but not having a higher experience of the bliss of Krishna consciousness is also not going to establish one in a transcendental position. Aruyya krichena param padam patanti adhoho anadata. They will eventually fall down because the nature of the soul is to seek pleasure. Either the soul will get pleasure in matter or in transcendence. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Opening up the floor if there is any questions or comments. Before that, before we take questions, we also want to take a moment to pray for the souls of the innocent souls who were killed in the Pahalgam massacre, the terrorist incident. It's very sad and unfortunate. This is what happens when religious principles become actually a cause of envy. This is an excellent example. This is what it means to be envious. Anybody who's not like me, I must destroy. That is not the vision of spiritually advanced souls. That is not the path of, that is the path of destruction. That is the path to hell. So we pray for the souls of those and we hope and pray that the dharma remains protected and the real principles of religion become well established, not only in India but all across the world, so that all kinds of cheating religion are vanquished. When we say cheating religions, we are not talking about religious denominations. We are talking about the principles that we spoke about. Because there are pure teachings within every tradition. So teachings which are based on principles of truth, sacrifice, humility, tolerance, non-enviousness, these are all eternal principles, even though they may be packaged according to time, place, circumstances. Of course, the purest form of dharma is definitely Sanatana Dharma, undoubtedly, and all other various systems is eventually evolved in terms of time, place, and circumstances. But as Prabhupada very liberally would always say, it doesn't matter as long as you develop attachment to the Lord. That is the sum and substance. That is the teaching of the Bhagavad as well. If you are developing love for the Lord, what is the problem? If you are not developing love for the Lord, what is the point? This is a very, very beautiful principle. I'm telling you again. Aradhito yadi hari tapasa tata kim. Aradhito yadi hari tapasa tata kim. Antar bahir yadi hari tapasa tata kim. Antar bahir yadi hari tapasat adaki. Very beautiful verse from the scriptures. That if you are able to worship the Supreme Lord with great love, then what is the need for all these other principles? And if you are following all other principles but not developing love for the Lord, what is the point of it all? If inside your heart, antar bahir yadi hari, if you have developed that vision of seeing everything in connection with the Lord, then all these ritualistic principles don't matter. And if you don't have that vision, then no matter how much amount of ritualistic principles you follow, it's of no use. So that has to be our supreme guiding principle. Okay, so let us pray to the Lord that we don't develop envy in the name of religion. Sometimes even as devotees, we start thinking of ourselves great, start envying other devotees, develop comparison, criticism, envious attitude, even going to the point of actually trying to actively destroy the lives of other devotees. This has happened in the community of devotees. Please don't think this doesn't happen. So, that is the nature of ego, greed, lust, can go to great extents to bewilder the minds of even those who are intellectually well versed in philosophy but lack genuine spiritual wisdom and insight. Yeah, Suresh Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, one general question. These Paramhamsa and Bhagavad both are same? Mahabhagavad.
Mahabhagavad is a Paramhamsa.
And how are they different from the other devotees mentioned in Bhagavatam?
No, devotees are at various levels, right? A Paramhamsa or a Mahabhagavad is one who has actually transcended material energy. Paramhamsa, the topmost swan. So, what is the characteristic of a swan? He is seated on the water, but he never becomes wet. A swan is a one who can separate milk from water. The basic point being that even when in the material world, they are not affected by the lower modes. They are situated in Shuddha Sattva or Vishuddha Sattva. That's why they are known as Paramhamsa. Sometimes even impersonalists who are truly liberated, sometimes they are also referred to as Paramhamsa. Paramhamsa is a person who is actually transcended material energy. But a Mahabhagavat is a Paramhamsa who has developed pure love for the Lord. Yeah, so he's not only transcended, he's not just situated in Shuddha Sattva. There are two categories of transcendence. There is Shuddha Sattva and there is Vishuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva is beyond passion and ignorance, situated in pure transcendental goodness, which is the platform of liberation. But Vishuddha Sattva is Vishesha, specialized Shuddha. And that Vishesha refers to pure devotion. It refers to the appearance of the spiritual energy within one's heart, the Ladini Samvit, Shakti within the heart, which evokes one's eternal relationship to the Lord and results in the realization of one's eternal identity and seva in the spiritual world. That is Vishuddha existence.
So this Mahabhagavatas comes under Vishuddha category. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Tarun Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhu.
Hare Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu, I have a question. Just a minute. There is a echo.
It's okay, I can still hear you. No problem.
Yeah. So this is in context of the corporate life, especially the appraisal cycle. So when somebody is expecting appraisal or getting a good hike or something like that, will that be considered as attachment or calling as a greed? Means ultimately that will consider as a mode of attachment, right?
Mute myself, I muted you. Sorry. So, our principle is simple, right? Our principle is not compromise in terms of action, but not being attached to the result. right? So Krishna didn't tell Arjuna that, you underperform. Krishna told Arjuna, you perform your best, but you do it for my pleasure and be detached from the outcome. So those who want to, our principle should be in terms of adding value, right? In any activity we do, we try to do it the best in such a way that the best outcome comes from it, material or spiritual. And when we do it in a way so as to produce the best outcome. Correct? Because when you want to clean a place, I'm just giving the example of cleaning, right? Your outcome has to be clear. Now I have to make it really clean. So you know what the outcome is, but you endeavor in the best way to achieve the outcome. But once your endeavor is completed, you are not attached to the outcome because you know that the actual outcome is beyond your control and you accept whatever comes. So what that means is, in our profession or whatever we are doing, our duties, we do our best. And then if promotion comes, okay, we can accept it if it serves us well. If a salary hike comes good, then we can think, oh, we can serve and take care of our family's needs in a better way. We can serve the Lord and the devotees also in a better way. I can go for more yatras. I can do more elaborate deity worship. I can, do so many things. So, so ultimately, if the motivation is right, that is fine. So in Grahastha ashram, there is some concession given. So one doesn't over endeavor. Sometimes what happens is one is so attached to becoming something big that one is all the time obsessed about working so hard and performing and being better than everyone else. What happens by that is, yes, one may be able to do a bit more better and achieve a bit more success than what one would do otherwise. But one's consciousness will then continuously be absorbed by all these considerations. So if it is absorbed in all these considerations, one cannot contemplate on the Lord. Then what is achieved? Because eventually everything will have to be left. So the best policy is to do our duties, whether in job or otherwise, to the best of our ability to produce the best outcome. And once it's done, let things come, whatever comes.
Prabhuji, but will that not increase our attachment? That's what my question was.
What will increase attachment?
Means,
If
let's suppose
if you work without attachment to the result, then it doesn't increase attachment. If you work with an intense hankering for the object, for the outcome, then it will increase attachment. Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu. That's why Krishna tells Arjuna, right? You fight, but you fight for me. Sukha dukkha same kritva labha labha jayo jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujjasva naivam papam avapsyasi, if I remember the verse correct. By considering gain and loss equal, victory and defeat equal, yuddhaya yujjasva. You fight because it is your duty to fight. Then you will not incur sin and be detached. So after you have fought your best, whether you will win or you will lose, that was anyway not in your control. Why are you bothering? So be attached to performing your duty, not to the fruits thereof. It's a very subtle point. Reflect it on it carefully. It's a subtle point. Huh? Be attached to doing your duty properly. Don't be lazy about doing your duty. Let not the fruit of your activity be the main driver for you. Understand? Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu. Ma karma phala heturbu. You are not simply performing the activity because I want the fruit, I want the fruit, I want the fruit. No. You are doing it because performance of your prescribed duty to the best of your ability, you are fully clear that that is what will give you auspiciousness and spiritual evolution. And the fruits will come according to the divine arrangement based on so many factors. They'll come. Sometimes they may come as you expect, sometimes they may not come as you expect, but you will still continue to perform your duties. So, if one performs one's duties with detachment, that is the consciousness. Higher than just detachment is to do it for the Lord's service with to please Him. So higher than Nishkam Karma Yoga is Bhakti Yoga. But either of them you do, one will not develop attachment to materialistic things. Even though the activity externally may be material and be driven by the nature of the body and the modes, it will not increase one's attachment. It will gradually result in detachment. That is the principle of yoga. Okay, clear? So it's okay. Just do your best.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That helps.
And yeah, let things come. So these things are not so easy to follow like this. It's not so easy. It requires. That's why we have to do sadhana continuously here. Then we come to that. Even to understand this principle that simply performing my duty nicely will lead to good fortune for me. It's not an easy thing to understand. It's not an easy thing to. What to speak of higher things of. The problem is sometimes we think ourselves higher than what we actually are, and then we adopt paradharma, and then we become flop, we become frustrated. We are actually, we may not be what we think we are. So do nice sadhana, associate with devotee, and this is for everyone. I'm not talking to just specifically you, it's true for me also. Do good sadhana, associate with devotees regularly here and chant, and whatever our either professional or family duties, do it sincerely, do it to the best of your ability without laziness. Don't think, oh, these are material duties. I just, oh. No. That is not Krishna's teaching. Be detached from the fruit, but when you do that activity, do it first class. There is a doctor, do first class. After you do it first class, if the patient survives or doesn't survive, that is in Krishna's hand. Whether you get honor, whether more patients come, that is the fruit. That is not in your hand. But don't be lazy because I'm not so interested in the fruit. Don't be lazy. Patient, come on. Just give him something. I want to quickly run home and chant my rounds. I just want to somehow do and get away. No. That is not what the teaching of the Gita is. If a devotee is a soldier on the border, he has to really fight and give his whole to do whatever is needed to protect the country, to fight with the enemies. And that is his duty. He has to do that. I have to do this as my duty, whatever the outcome comes, without fear of death, without attachment to the world. That will lead him to auspiciousness. Not saying, sit here and hide here and take out my bead bag and just sit here, let others fight. I'm not the body. If you don't have actual realization, just all this kind of pretentious abhas, all these things come under these 5 categories of deviation from dharma. Abhas, upadharma, vidharma, chaya dharma. It's tricky. Religion can be the deeper principles of religion are very tricky. That's why one needs the guidance of those who are able to perceive the subtleness of these divine principles. That's why we need the association of those who have greater wisdom than us and can guide us always. So, whatever you do, if you are a father, you have to be the best father. If you're a husband, you have to be the best husband. Best means you don't have to compare to the other person. Best of what you can do. This is what best means. So you don't have to get the award for the best husband of the planet. You do your best is what is expected. Whether you turn out to be the best in the company, that may happen, may not happen. But you have to do the best of your ability. The detached heart is what is expected. That is what is meant by best. Best of what you can do. It's not about impressing somebody and everybody will clap and then, Krishna also, you see, everybody clapped. So Krishna said, oh, I'm so impressed. Arun Prabhu, you are so wonderful. I must take you back to God. That's not how spiritual life works. You get right? Hari Hari, Jai Ho. Thank you. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaveda Gaura Bhakta. Okay, so I'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much. Hari Bol, Suraj, Shalini ji, Hare Krishna, Sini ji, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Vikas,
Krishna,
Hari
Krishna,
Bol.
Prabhuji.
Thank you. Amit and
Thank you
Priya.
very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Indulekha Mataji, Shri Devi ji, Anand Sundari Mataji. Pooja ji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandvat Pranam Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Sridhar ji
Thank
and
you.
family. Yeah, Hari Hari. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sridhar ji. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.